What if the God of heaven worshipped by billions was never the true creator? What if this world, everything you see, everything you believe, was built as a prison, crafted by false rulers to keep you blind? Hidden for over 1,500 years, a banned ancient text reveals a truth so dangerous, it was buried by the early church itself. A truth about Eve, her secret daughter, and a cosmic rebellion that could shatter everything you thought was divine. Stay with me until the end, because the final secret will change how you see the world forever. For centuries, it lay buried in the Egyptian desert, a fragile, leather-bound codex, untouched by time but feared by those who knew its name. When unearthed in 1945 near Nag Hammadi, scholars were stunned. Among the lost Gnostic scriptures was a text unlike any other, the reality of the rulers, a chilling revelation that had been suppressed for over 1,500 years. Why? Because it didn't just challenge religion, it dismantled the foundation of belief itself. This ancient manuscript tells a story eerily familiar, yet disturbingly inverted. The God of Genesis? Not the benevolent creator, but a false ruler, a blind, arrogant being who forged the material world not out of love, but out of ignorance and pride. And the Garden of Eden? Not paradise, but a prison. More than heresy, this was treason against the spiritual hierarchy. So the early church buried it, silencing voices that dared to say humanity was never meant to serve, but to awaken. This is the story they tried to erase, of hidden powers, of divine sparks trapped in flesh, and of Eve's secret daughter, born to break the chains. Long before time as we know it began, in the higher realms of pure light, a being named Sophia, the embodiment of divine wisdom, acted without her counterpart. From this solitary action came a flawed creation, Yaldabaoth, the first of the Archons. Born of imbalance, he was a malformed entity, ignorant of the true source, and yet full of pride. In his blindness, Yaldabaoth declared, "I am God, and there is no other." But he was wrong. He was not the supreme creator. He was an imitation, a counterfeit. And in his arrogance, he fashioned a realm of matter separate from the divine, a broken mirror of the true spiritual world. It was here, in this shadowed dimension, that he crafted the heavens and the earth, not as gifts of life, but as walls of containment. He created other archons, rulers and enforcers, each assigned a sphere of control. They were not gods, but jailers, architects of illusion. The sun, moon, and stars became part of their machinery. Earth was not a paradise. It was a carefully designed prison, veiled in beauty and pain, to distract the soul from its origins. These rulers shaped the material world to trap divine sparks, fragments of light fallen from the higher realms. Every soul born into this world was a hostage, kept ignorant by design. This was the first deception. A false god, worshipped as the Most High, ruling over a realm built on lies. A reality where truth had to be hidden to survive. Satisfied with his illusion of divinity, Yaldabaoth sought to create a being in his image, a creature that would worship him as the one true God. From the clay of the earth, he and his fellow Archons molded a figure, Adam. But no matter how perfect the form, it remained lifeless. They could shape flesh, but they could not kindle spirit. The Archons, in their pride, believed they had created life. But Adam was only a shell, a body without essence, a puppet without breath. Their creation was incomplete, incapable of reason, motionless on the earth they ruled. The true source had not yet spoken. Moved by compassion, Sophia intervened. From the higher realms, she sent a breath of divine light, a spark of true life, into Adam. In that moment, the shell became a soul. Adam awoke, not merely alive, but aware. And within him stirred something the Archons feared, a connection to a realm beyond their control. But this divine spark, once ignited, could not be hidden. The Archons saw it. They realized Adam was not truly theirs. He could see through the illusion. He could remember what they wanted forgotten. This single act, Sophia's gift, threatened the entire false kingdom. So they conspired. If they could not undo the light within him, they would bury it in distractions, fears, and lies. Adam's awakening was not a triumph for the rulers. It was the beginning of their unraveling. And they knew the war for the human soul had just begun. The Archons were furious. Their prized creation, Adam, no longer bowed before them in ignorance. He had tasted awareness, and within him burned a fire they could not control. They had wanted a servant, but instead they had given form to a divine mirror, one that reflected a truth they had long tried to bury. They were not gods, merely impostors. Their jealousy turned to paranoia. If one human could awaken, others might follow. The Archons began to manipulate the design. They cast Adam into a deep sleep and, from his side, they formed Eve, hoping to use her as a tool, a distraction, a vessel of temptation. But their plan backfired. Eve, like Adam, carried the spark. In fact, her connection to the divine was deeper, inherited from Sophia herself. The Archons sensed this, and it terrified them. This woman, born of man's flesh but touched by heavenly wisdom, could not be controlled. Desperate to maintain dominion, they set traps, created laws, and spun doctrines, all to suppress her influence. Yet the more they tried to contain her, the more her light slipped through their fingers. And from this light would come a force even they could not foresee. Eve was not just the mother of humanity. She was the gatekeeper to a secret lineage, a spiritual rebellion that would rise from the shadows. A daughter unspoken, a generation incorruptible. From Eve's essence, not through the flesh, but through the spirit, a hidden seed was sown. She gave rise to a daughter not named in the Genesis scrolls, not recognized by tradition, yet whispered of in the lost pages of Gnostic truth. This daughter was not of dust, but of light, not of submission, but of remembrance. She is called the incorruptible one, the reflection of divine wisdom untainted by the Archon's deceit. Where Adam bore the breath of life, and Eve carried the spark of Sophia, this daughter was born with memory. She did not forget the source. She saw through the veil of the rulers and did not fear them. She walked among illusions but was not bound by them. To the Archons, she was a threat greater than Adam or Eve. She did not simply resist, she exposed. Her very existence was a rebellion, a living testimony that their false kingdom could be challenged from within. Through her, the divine feminine returned, not as a helper to man, but as a warrior of truth. She did not raise armies. She awakened minds. Her role was not to destroy the Archons by force, but to dismantle their greatest weapon, ignorance. In every soul she touched, she ignited remembrance of the true Creator, the infinite source beyond form, beyond fear. She is not just Eve's daughter. She is the mother of the incorruptible generation, those who awaken, those who remember, those who refuse to kneel to a false god. And her legacy is not one of myth, but of calling. The same divine spark that lived in her lives in us. With their control slipping, the Archons devised a new strategy, one more insidious than brute force. They would not conquer through violence, but through belief. If humanity could not be chained in body, it would be shackled in mind. So they wove a grand illusion, a god of wrath cloaked in light, commandments etched in fear, and salvation dangled like bait. They declared themselves divine, fashioned systems of worship, and whispered their names into the ears of kings and priests. The demiurge, Yaldabaoth, proclaimed, "I am a jealous god. There is no other but me." And humanity, blinded by the splendor of creation and deafened by the echo of fear, believed. They rebranded the prison as paradise. They turned obedience into virtue and questioning into sin. The divine spark within each soul was buried beneath layers of guilt, shame, and doctrine. The Archons knew, a soul that forgets its origin is easy to rule. Religions rose, empires were built, and the worship of false gods became the foundation of civilization. Those who remembered, the Gnostics, the seekers, the bearers of inner knowledge, were hunted, silenced, erased from history. But the text of the reality of the rulers survived. It warned that the world we see is not the world that is, that the God placed on the throne may not be the creator, but the deceiver. And in that warning lies the seed of rebellion, the call to awaken, to see, and to remember. The true battle was never fought with swords or fire. It was a war of perception, of memory. The Archons feared one thing above all, that humanity would awaken to its origin, that the divine light buried deep within would begin to rise. And it did. The incorruptible daughter, born of spirit, lit the path for the awakened ones. These were not prophets in temples, nor rulers with crowns, but ordinary people who began to feel a pull, a quiet voice within that whispered, "You are more than this." To awaken was to remember that divinity does not dwell on thrones or in books written by the rulers, but within the very soul of humankind. That the power the Archons claimed was never truly theirs. It was borrowed, stolen, repackaged in fear and ritual. One by one, souls began to rise from the slumber of illusion. Some through dreams, others through suffering, many through silence. They realized that salvation was not given, it was claimed. That heaven was not a distant realm, but a state of inner being, hidden behind the noise of control. The rebellion was not loud. It was not televised. It did not seek to overthrow temples. It sought to dissolve the lie that built them. The rulers lost ground not because they were attacked, but because their illusion began to fade. And every time a soul remembered who they were, a fracture appeared in the walls of the false reality. The prison remained, but the doors began to unlock. To question the ruler was treason. To doubt the Creator was blasphemy. But the reality of the rulers dares to say it plainly. The God worshipped by billions is not the true God at all, but Yaldabaoth, the impostor, the blind craftsman who mistook his echo for the voice of the source. He sits not in divine authority, but in counterfeit glory, clothed in thunder, surrounded by fear, ruling through commandments etched in stone, not to enlighten, but to command. He demands worship, not because he is worthy, but because he is terrified of what would happen if humanity saw past the illusion. He is not the creator, but the divider. Not the light, but the shadow cast by Sophia's forgotten act. His name may change Jehovah, El Shaddai, Lord Almighty, but his purpose remains, to keep the divine spark in chains. And perhaps the most unsettling truth of all, he believes he is God. In his blindness, he knows no other. And so his dominion is sincere, but tragically false. He is the jailer who thinks he is the king, the architect of a world designed to worship him, while hiding the true source beyond his reach. This, then, is the real enemy, not evil for evil's sake, but ignorance wielding power. And it is this enemy that the secret daughter and the incorruptible generation rise to confront, not with hatred, but with knowledge. The rulers ruled through amnesia, but those who remembered could not be touched. The incorruptible ones, born not of flesh alone but of awakened spirit, became the cracks in the foundation of the false kingdom. They walked among the masses, but the world did not recognize them. Their power was not in strength, but in sight. They could see what others could not. Their legacy was not written in temples or carved into monuments, but whispered across time, in dreams, in revelations, in moments of piercing clarity when the veil would lift and the truth would shine through. They taught that the divine was not above, but within. That salvation was not obedience, but awakening. Each incorruptible one carried the seed of rebellion, not against the body, but against the lie. And each time they ignited the spark in another, the illusion weakened. Their knowledge became a torch passed hand to hand through generations, often in silence, often at great cost. The Archons could destroy bodies, burn texts, erase names, but they could not extinguish the light. It lived on, hidden in plain sight, waiting for each of us to remember. This was their gift, their war, their legacy, to awaken the divine within us all, and to remind us that we were never meant to kneel. The truth was never lost, only hidden. Buried beneath layers of doctrine, disguised by ritual, whispered only in moments of stillness. The reality of the rulers does not ask you to believe, it dares you to remember. The Archons still rule, not with chains, but with systems. Not with swords, but with screens. Their prison has evolved, now built from distraction, fear, and manufactured purpose. And yet, their greatest fear remains unchanged, that you might awaken. The divine spark never left you. It waits beneath the noise, beneath the names, beneath the roles you were taught to play. It is not given by priest or prophet. It was always yours. The secret the rulers tried to erase is not just about Eve's daughter or ancient gods, it's about you. The final revelation is simple and devastating to the false order. You are not a creation of the rulers. You are the descendant of light. And you were never meant to serve, you were meant to awaken. So look around. Look within. The illusion is vast, But the truth has always been waiting, in plain sight. If this story stirred something deep inside you, if it made you question what you've always been told, then you're not alone. The spark has always been there. They just didn't want you to find it. So share this video with someone who's ready to remember. And don't forget to subscribe because the veil is only beginning to lift. Do you think humanity has been trapped in a spiritual illusion? Or are we finally starting to wake up? Comment below. Your voice might be the one that sparks someone else's awakening.